Today we are taking a look at the Asus Prime AP201 MicroATX case, and I have to say, this is a great case to build in. In today's video we'll be going over a few features and specs of the AP201 and kind of walking you through my experience building a PC in this case. Let's go! So for this PC, Asus sent everything from their Prime lineup with a few of their Tough lineup as well to build an amazing little PC. For the motherboard I used the Asus Prime Z690M Plus D4 combined with an i9-12900, 32GB of 3200MHz Kingston Fury Renegade RAM, a 2TB Kingston Fury PCIe 4.0 M.2 drive, and an RTX 3050. They also sent a 120mm AIO cooler for the i9, and honestly for an i9 I would rather go for something like a 240 or 360mm radiator, and since the case actually supports those sizes, I would rather go for those, as those will be better options for the CPU chosen in this build. Now coming back to the case comes in both black and white versions and adds this sort of mesh all around the case to allow for better airflow to go into the case as well as out of the case. Now, even though this is a MicroATX case, it is actually pretty spacious and allows for up to 360mm radiator support, as well as GPUs up to 338mm long, but you just need to check out the other parts in your PC to ensure that you can actually fit that size radiator and that size GPU as well. Another thing I really liked about this case is the tool-free design that allows you to remove all of the side panels all without needing to remove a single screw, and you will only need a screwdriver to tighten down your power supply, motherboard, and your GPU. The power supply itself is attached to a bracket and then attached to the front of the case, where you can decide how high you want it depending on if you want to use a 360mm radiator or not, and if you need more space at the bottom of the case, which in this case we needed since we didn't actually use a modular power supply. Now, as mentioned, we didn't use a modular power supply, and when building in any sort of MicroATX or mini ITX case, I would highly suggest getting at least a modular power supply, but if you can get a fully modular power supply, then that would be best. Now, what modular and fully modular will allow you to do is actually just use the cables that you need and not have all these extra cables that you have to tuck away somewhere. Now, in this PC, we did have space to actually tuck those away, but in most other PC cases, you don't have that space. So as mentioned before, if you're going to be building in a small form factor size, then maybe just go out and spend a little bit more for a modular or fully modular power supply. Now for this case, since you have that panel in the front, it does actually hide the cables pretty well. And if you take a look at the back side, you do have a lot of space to route cables, and they've even made it a little indentation slot with Velcro straps to help guide cables and keep them in place, which I think all small cases should have, as cable management in small cases can be sort of a nightmare, but not here. When it comes to front panel connections, you do have a USB 3.2 Gen 2 Type-C port that can transfer data up to 10GB per second, headphone and mic ports, as well as two USB 3.2 Gen 1 ports and your power switch. Now, after I was done building, I let the PC run for a few hours, and I was really surprised at the thermals of this PC. Now, even though we didn't have a lot of fans installed in the PC itself, I do believe that all the holes really do suck in new fresh air, while allowing for hot air to escape easily without the use of fans in this case. But if you want to ensure that the PC stays as cool as possible, then you can add a bigger radiator that will push out more air out of this case, but you can also try add more fans to actually pull in more cool air into the PC itself. Overall, for me, building in the Asus Prime AP201 felt no different than building in a standard ATX case, and I loved it. The case never felt like it restricted you, and the fact that you can remove all of these side panels without needing to remove any screws was really convenient. And since you have a lot of space for cables, you don't have to spend hours planning your wire routes just to ensure that you can actually close your side panels again. Now, MicroATX cases do come with their drawbacks, usually in the amount of fans that you can add, but also in the amount of hard drive space that they have. Now with this case, you can add a 2.5-inch drive, but there really isn't any space for a 3.5-inch drive, so if you use any of those, then this case might not be ideal for you, or you'll just have to upgrade them to 2.5-inch drives or M.2 drives. Now, as mentioned before, you can also add up to 360mm radiator, but that is also about as much fans as you can fit into this PC apart from the one that it already ships with. Now, another thing people tend to forget is the amount of PCIe slots available on a MicroATX board, and if you use a lot of internal capture cards, this can be a problem. And then lastly is the GPU space. Now, even though in this case it isn't really that big of an issue, but there are still a few GPUs that might not fit into this case due to it being longer than the 338 millimeters that it can actually fit. So if you're looking for a smaller PC or you've always wanted to build in a MicroATX case, then this case is a great one to start with. It is easy to build in, cable management is easy to do right, and even if you only have a non-modular power supply, you still have enough space to jam in all of those unwanted cables. And for that reason, I can really highly recommend the Asus Prime AP201 case for your next build. And then, as always, until next time, cheers.